Hey everyone, I hope you had a great weekend, that you've had a great start to the week. So, I'm going to try to make this concise, but basically, what I'm going to try to do is bullet point some of the big changes that have come out in the forums this week. This is not to replace going to the contracts class or coming to the forums update class, which is specifically going to go through all of these on Thursday at 10:30. So, if you haven't put that on your calendar yet, be sure to put that on your calendar. It's going to be 10:30 in the West Ashley office before team meeting. It will not be streamed live. However, we will record it and send it out. But I would encourage you to come to this and then come to any upcoming contracts classes because they will be covering these changes as well. So, just to bullet point some of the highlights of the changes. Number one, Form 120. That is the compensation agreement. That used to be one form that you would check off the box for buyer or seller. That has now become two forms. You're going to use one for if it's the seller paying the buyer's agency compensation, or if it's going to be the listing brokerage paying the buyer's agent compensation. So you now have two separate forms for that. There's also some disclosures that are added in there as far as who's being paid. There's also some updates on the terms of the form. So it's a little bit more of a comfort level for the seller or the listing agent to sign that form if there's not a contract, because it specifically states that it is related to a specific property and it's only paid if that property closes. So those are some big changes that are actually very much needed in there. The second form, again, these are just an overview. The second change that's coming is in Form 130, the buyer's agency agreement. So really three areas that are being changed in there. Number one is there is an additional disclosure on to everyone that you can't just unilaterally terminate a buyer's agency agreement. There does have to be a signed termination by all parties in order for that to be terminated. The second part is how to handle bonuses. Not only do they clarify the section on how commissions are paid and calculated, they've actually added a section in there that specifically addresses bonuses that you may receive, and that the buyer is aware that you may receive them and that they agree to them and a certain amount, and then how to deal with them if the amounts are different. And then the third area that they've changed on it is a protection period. There has been an added protection period in the buyer's agency agreement that says if it is canceled or it is terminated, that they're within a certain period of days or a certain amount of time, if a buyer purchases a home within a certain criteria, then your commission is still earned and the agency would still apply. The third form is the purchase and sale agreement. There are a handful of changes that came in this. This is Form 310. This is the form that we use for all of the purchase and sales, with the exception of commercial or vacant land. But basically, there's a couple different areas in here. Number one is in the Section 6, which talks about concessions and compensation. They've really changed up the formatting and added some clarity to that to make sure that everyone understands how the compensation is being handled, if it is being handled from concessions, and that everyone agrees. A next section that is being clarified in there is in due diligence. This is a much needed one. There's some verbiage that was added about the termination fee, specifically about what happens if you terminate during due diligence for a contingency that's not in due diligence. So if you terminated during due diligence because of a finance contingency or CO 100, it specifies in there that the termination fee would not be due during that time. It also gives you some clarity on there as well that lets you know that the commission can be disclosed and that it should be connected to a buyer agency agreement or a listing agreement that could be referenced in the contract. And this is a great step in the direction to make sure everyone is fully disclosed to whether or not the seller knows if the buyer's paying an additional commission to it. The buyer's agent knows that the seller knows that the commission's being paid here. There's a lot of unknowns because they didn't want to blanketly advertise what commissions are, but then it's the chicken and the egg: is do we have a compensation agreement filled out, and have we agreed on this before we agree on that? This does allow some of the referencing of buyer agency agreements, listing agreements, and compensation agreements. And that is buttoned up in the last section, which allows for addendums. Instead of just having blanks in there, we'll write the addendums. They're now going to be adding a list of addendums that would be acceptable. Some of those would be a compensation agreement that could be reference to it. There could be buyer agency agreement. It could be all the ones that you would want to maybe reference to that based on how you're negotiating concessions and compensation. So again, this wasn't meant to be a complete description of all of them, but just give some bullet points of things to look out for, because I know some of you will be fine just going and reading these changes and be okay with it. But for most of us, I encourage you to all come to the class on Thursday. Like I said, at 10:30, we will be recording it. It won't be live, but we'll send it up afterwards. But I would encourage you to come in person, ask lots of questions. And then as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me or anybody on your leadership team. We're here to help. Hope you have a great day. Talk to you soon. Take care.